Close your eyes, or sit back, enjoy the night. If you're not lost in your head, you're better off dead. Out your window, head at night, holding your breath and keeping it quiet. Stop the car, it's running cold. In the chair, but you're feeling old. Down the block, meet your day. Check your watch, it's a little late. That's okay. Close your eyes, sit back, enjoy the night. If you're not lost in your head, you're better off dead. In the year, in the month, in the day, in the moment it started. Was a boy, no man, still a kid, ignorance departed. Now I know we're just running around, pretending we got places to be. Looking for people, dreams that won't come true.
You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Kaylin, when you're the producer, you have one job. One job. All right. Sorry, let's try that again. Hey, everyone. Greg Staley here from Diverge Media. And I would say that the other one who wasn't paying attention was Roderick, but clearly it was me. Thanks, everybody, for joining the show. So obviously the title tonight was, we would have picked a better title, but censorship. So we plan on talking about my article today, which mentions the CV vaccine. We already have a strike against our YouTube channel, so we're going to do our best to be careful about it when speaking about it. So there's no need to draw attention to it in the title or description. So that's why we went with what we did. But let's get right into it here. I think there's some interesting developments happening in the news. And specifically, I want to get started with some resignations at the Center for Disease Control. So, Kate, when you're ready. So this one's out of the Federalist, but it was also reported in the New York Post. But here we go. Top CDC official steps down weeks after emails surface showing collusion with the teachers union. Sounds similar to a certain Fistman over in Canada. One of the top Center for Disease Control and Prevention officials who was included in emails between the agency and the nation's second largest teachers union on schools reopening will step down from her position this summer, Politico reports. Anne Schuchat, the CDC's principal deputy director, was one of multiple government officials included in emails between the American Federation of Teachers Union, who repeatedly lobbied against in-person schooling, and the agency over the school reopening guidelines, which were released earlier this year. She said she's leaving to allow more time for creative passions after spending the last 7 years in her spot as the CDC's second in command. But this is, I believe, the second major CDC official to resign in the last few weeks. The other was Dr. Nancy Messonnier, the former director of the National Center for Immunization and Diseases. So, interesting developments happening at the CDC. You get major officials like that choosing to resign. It kind of makes you wonder why they're choosing to resign. And I don't believe for a second, maybe I'll get your take on this project, but I don't think she's pursuing her creative passions. Maybe she is, but I don't think it was willingly by choice. What's your take? Obviously, that's opinion, but.
Wow. Sorry, I kind of missed the beginning of that. So she's not
two
just
CDC officials. No, she's stepping down. That's two of them now.
Sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of that. So is she being forced to step down? Is what you think?
No. Oh, I'm just stepping down to pursue my creative passions, Broderick.
Okay, I caught that. Okay, so then
yeah. So do you really buy that?
She's got some sort of voice in her head actually speaking to her, saying not saying she's cuckoo, but like she has a conscience, and she's obviously
not at all. You think it's about conscience? I think it's about seeing the writing on the wall and getting out before things get bad. Listen,
yeah, one or the other.
If I'm putting my opinion on this, there's no way she's getting out because of the goodness of her heart. Okay, she's had 16. But 16 months to do it. I'm pretty sure if you were going to get out because you had a conscience, you would have done it a little bit sooner. Pretty sure she's probably getting out not to pursue her creative passions, but if I had to guess, was maybe concerned that there will be some poking around in investigations after all this is said and done.
Let's just say I'll rephrase that. She's finally found some sort of a conscience.
No, again, I don't think that's anything to do with conscience. You call that? I wouldn't call that finding conscience. If you thought you were going to get in trouble and you get out of your job, that's not finding a conscience. That's called seeing the writing on the wall and getting out of Dodge before the getting gets bad.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, that's not. I don't buy that for a second. Like she had good intentions and that's why she's getting out. Creative. I'm going to pursue my creative passions. Anyways, let's get on to the next opinion here in the article. So this one, we're going to get into it a little bit emotional, but it was actually a CBC opinion piece, ironically, by a 13-year-old girl named Natasha Simone, I think it is. Let's pull it up here. Yeah, Natasha Simone. Hey, I highly doubt you would watch this, and I hope you don't because it's not supposed to be kid-friendly. Not that it's not that we're swearing or anything like that. It's just not normally a kid would tune into politics. But she wrote a really well-written article. I think she hit all the major points, and reading it actually got me extremely emotional. I broke down. I'm not ashamed to say that because no 13-year-old should speak the way she articulated herself in this article. So it's a pretty short article, so I'm going to read through probably most of it. But she starts, it's only 3 weeks, I tell myself, and then school will start again. You had school all year until now, and you were the lucky ones. I'm 13 years old in the 7th grade, and this is what the pandemic has felt like for me. She said, I consider myself a lucky one. I still got to go to school, got to see people at school and be around them, and still felt like there was nobody was really there. Usually sat in the dark room with the lights off, blinds closed, all of us facing some sort of electronic device, procrastinating and not getting our work done. There are no sports teams, no music rehearsals, no drama club. When I get home, the first thing I wanted to do is lay on my bed and just look up the ceiling every single day. I keep saying to myself, it's okay because next week it will be better. But the next week was always the same as the last. And I've learned that now, and I have given up. 13 years old, everyone. Occasionally, I would break down in tears and have to go to the school counselor for help. Some of my classmates, they've done the same. We don't really need to talk to the counselor anyway. What we need is to hang with our friends. The thing that really bothers me is the adults really don't understand. They know, but they don't understand. Whenever we talk, the teacher would tell us we're spreading spit particles across the room, and that could get someone sick. If we stood up because we've been sitting for 5 hours straight, a teacher would tell us to sit back because we weren't socially distancing. So I still have hope that things will get better, even though it will be a long time before they will. Continue here. Sometimes I felt like we were living in some sort of hell torture device. We tried to escape this torture device by staring at our phones, going on social media, or playing games. It is the only thing we can do, but it is making us more depressed, and we feel worthless and lonely. 13. We want to escape the loneliness, depression, anxiety, and stress, but our electronics are causing more. We waste our time scrolling through TikTok or Instagram when we would be doing our work or after school playing sports or hanging out with our friends, but we can't. I have completely given up on trying. So you can read the rest of the article there. I probably shouldn't read a whole article that's not ours into a broadcast like this. She did a really good job, and kudos to her for writing it. But when a 13-year-old's telling you that she's depressed and anxious and dreads going to school, and just describes depression for you as a result of the measures we've taken place that haven't been based on science. I know Fissman and the science table would love to have you believe that schools are known to cause significant amounts of spread. They might be known to cause significant amounts of cases, but not lead to poor outcomes, because again, teaching is a younger profession. Majority of teachers are below the age of 55, believe it or not. Crazy. And a lot of them below 40. And so it doesn't make sense. But here we are. Don't feel free to interject or anything. Just leaving it open here.
I would say I can understand what she's going through, but I don't think I understand it to the same point. Because I think I got to have that that time in school. I literally got out of school 2.5 years before this happened. It's been 3 years since I graduated high school. And it's just, I don't have that same perspective, but I know what it's like to a degree, because I'm still trying to develop those friendships that you're supposed to make for a lifetime, and develop really a relationship and eventually get married and all that. It's not as viable as it used to be. You can't go out to a bar or whatever.
Well, and you're thinking from your perspective at like 13, it's like you took away.
It's her childhood.
Fundamentally, you took away their whole world. You're 13, it's like, and you go to school, your friends are your whole world. Like being able to go play at recess and go play sports and go to music rehearsals and stuff like that. That is your world. And it's been taken away on in irrational fear, because teachers unions, in my opinion, have lobbied to remain closed. And this is one of the things recently, I don't know if you heard about, Ford was caught admitting to not, he said, I'd love to reopen the schools, but the teachers unions, and he pointed the blame that way. So yeah, they keep kicking this can down the road. They're not really acknowledging the pain it's causing, and it needs to change quick. Like the schools need to be reopened. The mask mandate needs to be gone in schools. If teachers want to freaking mask up, then they can mask up. But as far as kids and development and the things like that, they need to be seeing their friends' faces. They need to be having that time. So yeah. Continue here. Pop up here. So
someone's saying background music's too loud. Can't hear the discussion. There's no music playing. Check your other tabs maybe on your computer.
Unless our laptop's that loud, but it really shouldn't be. So, so we can pull this up, Kate. So obviously people jumped on this. This was not an endorsement of the Liberal Party or Kathleen Wynne. This was basically satire and pointing out what the vote was on that motion and kind of drawing a parallel for people to think about. Again, do I know that things would be freer if Kathleen Wynne was premier? No, but she did vote to reopen the outdoors, and it kind of looks bad when the former premier, that's been Big Bad Wynne, it basically voted to open outdoors, and Ford's party didn't. So as you can see, there she is. She's part of it. 2163 was the vote, and just interesting. I say it's a head scratcher as to why the Conservative Party wouldn't want to go with this low-hanging fruit. But as I say that, they're talking about, I guess May 26 is what they're talking about now for reopening now. So I don't know if Ford's seen that. What's behind Ford's sudden reversal and opening of outdoor sports facility? Does he see his future? Yeah, sorry, not you guys had another tap plan. All good. Yeah, so I mean, who knows what Ford sees and what the motivation behind this is, but we know the motivation isn't scientifically related. Even his own science table, who has been very draconian in their approach and more than okay stomping on the charter to limit mobility, which they correlate with cases, they didn't even have closure of outdoor amenities and facilities, and the Ford government did it. And then a motion came up and the NDP presented it. I assume they voted it down because the NDP presented it, but isn't it curious that just a few days later, so today is Wednesday, They held the motion Monday to reopen the vote. Sarah Singh of Brampton, NDP, brought forward the motion to open outdoor amenities in recreational facilities, and then 2 days later, all of a sudden, Ford's talking about reopening on May 26th. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's just happened to be, or do you think there's a little more to that? Seems politically motivated to me.
Political theater, trying to gain more trust in people who support him, people who may not support him. Because
I could see him taking a huge shift here.
If you give that over to the NDP, like I think I commented on Paul's post, is that looks really bad as a party. If that gets through and the NDP, that gives the NDP more favor, even though I wouldn't vote for them or the Conservative Party of Ontario. It's just political theater. Like at the end of the day, that's really all it is.
I could literally see Ford in the next month or two being like, you know what, we're just going to reopen no color-coded system and hope that he can save face politically, because he has become nobody can stand the guy. And so, like, I mean, the NDP Liberal are looking like alternatives here in Ontario, which isn't necessarily a good thing. Maybe Ford is looking at what's going on here and says now it's time to maybe pull the reins back a little bit. But who knows what they're thinking? We'll see. Everything changes in 2 weeks anyways. They could have come out and dangle the carrot and then yank the carpet again. So I wouldn't be surprised if it goes that way either. But so obviously, okay, let's transition here. There's been a lot of money spent during COVID and a lot of things happening. And anytime there's major events that happen, there's always people view it in power as opportunity oftentimes. So one of the things that was explored and funded by the government of Canada through the Job Skill Center, I believe it's called, was something called the Yesterday's Gone report, where they talk about different trends, and they see a green energy revolution as an emerging trend. And I want to just go into that, what they're talking about in this report, because I think, again, they're talking about this by 2030. It's not that far down the road. But here's what they say, and then they say in 2030 this could mean. They say, in Canada, investment in the green energy is expected to increase 46% by 2030, while recent private and public sector support in electric cars and trucks from across the political spectrum, such as automaker Ford's $1.8 billion investment that was backed by both the Ontario Conservative and Federal Liberals, suggests significant development in carbon-free transport over the coming decade. This may lead to an employment boom in green energy-related occupations and new demand for relevant skills. And then they start making hypothetical scenarios about what this will mean in Canada by 2030. And just so people don't think I'm making it up, so this is page 33, but you can see this is Yesterday's Gone report. Just one thing here. Future skills. So this project is part of the portfolio work by the Future Skills Center, which is funded by the Government of Canada's Future Skill Program. So now, sorry everyone, go 33 it was, I think. So in 2030, this could mean, right, and they have it right here in their funded report. And so I just have that in my article. Oh, where'd it go? Well, this one. So they say it could mean wide-scale implementation of policies like carbon tariffs and tax cuts for green energy companies. But this is where the eyebrows get raised. We may see increases in individual and corporate energy usage monitoring. Time of use pricing may go up, everyone. Use of rolling blackouts or social pressure to conserve energy. So literally in a government-funded report, in 2030, this could mean, we see this as an emerging trend, and this could mean use of rolling blackouts or social pressure to conserve energy. Now, what do you mean by social pressure? And what do you mean by use of rolling blackouts? This is absurd. Now, despite being regarded as a relatively cleaner energy source, they say natural gas may no longer be socially acceptable to use in commercial and residential development, meaning more expensive forms of energy would be hooked up, making business and residential living more expensive. So they go on to talk about all sorts of stuff, labor market implications. And then I kind of go through a little bit of a report on the dark side of solar waste, but this is being talked about in government reports right now. And they're kicking around the idea in 2030, use of rolling blackouts to conserve energy. So, I mean, some of this stuff sounds conspiratorial, but like, again, right from a government report, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. They're looking at different trends. They said, hey, we see this as an emerging trend that kind of like to keep an eye on. So I wonder if I can show that. They actually have ratings. Yeah, here it is. So they have weak, emerging, and mature for the trends that they analyze in this report. And this one's considered an emerging trend. So it means something that they think is starting to happen. They think a green energy revolution's coming, I guess. And yeah, what do you take on that? Like when you read that out of a government report, you're a younger guy. How does that hit you?
It's first of all, it's not possible in Canada. You can't rely solely on green energy. Not saying that that's exactly what the report said, but cold countries can't do that. You have to be able to heat your homes in the winter, and you can't do that with solar. I don't believe you can do that with wind completely.
Well, it's more than that. You have to change out the entire energy infrastructure needs to be changed to be able to deal with the different infrastructure. It's not designed to be our infrastructure and our energy grid isn't designed around wind turbine energy and solar panel energy. It's designed around gas, oil, coal, nuclear. So yeah, selling off our excess power for $1.50 to Michigan while our consumers pay exorbitant rates. And yes, wind was the fault and for these green energy contracts that we're paying exorbitant amounts for. And what she did to make herself look good, in my opinion, my understanding of it is it's kind of like a deferred contract. So lower expenses on the front end while she was elected and in power. And then, and it gets more and more as time goes on. So she gets to look good. Virtue signal as she implements that policy. And then meanwhile, it hurts Canadians more and more as the contract goes on.
Other than that, it can be scary. That's like, imagine having that happen in the winter. Rolling blackout.
Well, I don't think it makes, again, if it's my energy policy today, it makes absolute zero sense. To me, net zero is just another agenda for green ideologues to try to siphon money from the populace because it's a socialism scheme. And, oh, hey guys, suddenly we can't design schemes that incentivize the right behaviors like capitalism's supposed to do. We can't make tax cuts for the right things that are going to save the planet because, guys, we're going to die if we don't do this. If you don't give us all your money to save the planet, then why can't we incentivize people to do that? Instead, I'm supposed to believe that the only solution that can solve this pressing, detrimental societal problem that's going to kill us all is to give my money to the government that somehow finds ways to just mismanage my funds at every single turn. And I'm supposed to believe that giving them money, and then they discuss the term of rolling blackouts by 2030, and I'm supposed to just trust them. It's going to be okay. You know, we had former liberal minister, and he was in charge of consumer affairs, but he's the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, Dan McTagg, talking about Canadians have been very, not to paraphrase here, but have been just not paying attention to this for a very long time and kind of letting it go by the wayside. But these things are very close to hitting home. The Colonial Pipeline hack, there's much of the states, I think when Mr. McTagg was on, he said over 80% of Washington state didn't have gas. These are very real issues. And things go from fun Instagram selfies, Twitter, to, wow, I can't drive to work now, and I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, like how we get groceries into the stores, like overnight. It can happen like that. And if you don't know, follow that interview, but basically Line 5 was ordered to be shut down, brings 500,000 liters of oil into Sarnia that gets refined. It's over 50% of the oil supply to Quebec and Ontario would be shut off if that goes down. They ordered it shut down. Enbridge is running it anyways, and it's going through the court system as we speak. But this is the type of stuff that Canadians have not paid attention to. And if we're doing a green policy that made sense, we would extract as much oil as we could, put the most stringent standards that we could on it here, and we already have some of the most stringent standards, if not the most stringent standards of extraction in the world. And we would supply all the major countries that are major polluters, like China, who, according to a rhodium report, polluted more than all developing nations combined in 2019. We would supply them with our ethical and clean oil and gas, and that would, by definition, clean up a lot of the carbon emissions, you would say, if that's the whole driver. So it doesn't make any sense. And then you would use all that money, by the way, to pay off the massive and enormous amounts of debt our government has accumulated during these lockdowns because they've had zero leadership, zero vision, zero plan. You're killing me here, man. You got to. He works all day and then
I just can't. But yeah.
All right, so we're gonna move on here. Liberal Minister of Climate Change is very pleased with Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole's endorsement of carbon tax. So, been watching a lot of the Parliament videos lately, which sucks. They're very dry, very boring, and a lot of times, I'm not gonna lie, the questions that get asked are terrible. And there's usually one or two people that might ask questions that are worth your time. It's like you'll watch 3 hours and hope that you get a 3 or 4 minute clip out of what you watched. But this one, we have the Liberal Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Jonathan Wilkinson, saying he's very pleased a few weeks ago to see the Conservative Party actually endorse a carbon tax and a clean fuel standard, everyone. So, Erin O'Toole getting endorsements in the political world. Let's hear it.
Science and what science tells us we must do. So there's no big surprise here. But what I would say is they do require certainty with respect to major policy instruments. And that's why I was very pleased a few weeks ago to see the Conservative Party actually endorse a carbon tax and a clean fuel standard, two policies they have been fighting for the past number of years, and things that are really important in terms of having certainty. So I welcome the Conservative Party actually coming to the party. It would require changes to the law to actually amend this. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is intended to be a forcing function on all future.
So that's the endorsement there. You can check out the rest of that video. It was interesting. Basically, was asked about relevant terms when we set these targets, like should we include the economy and how it affects people and all these different factors that are relevant in setting these targets. Why won't you do that? And he basically called them ad hominems and names. But yeah, it was interesting. Sorry, where'd it go? There it is. I want to read this here. So what he brought up, it was Dan Albus, a conservative minister. He said, he brought up the fact around these relevant things to have in when discussing these targets around net zero. And so he says, do you not think that's important? And what the minister did is he responded, he said, what I would say to you is, do you believe in climate change or not? I mean, at the end of the day, if we're going to live in a livable world in the future, you must have a net zero world by 2050. That's the bottom line. You either believe it or you don't. So I bring this up to say, this is a liberal minister getting questioned, a very relevant question. Hey, maybe when you're setting these ideological targets about net zero, we should consider the economy, healthcare, science, different things that come into play. And he goes, you either believe in climate change or you don't. So ad hominem attacks. What's your take, Project?
Just trying to push something through. That's all they're doing. It's there's nothing more to really say. It's just they don't want to use their brains. They don't want to think critically or whatever it may be. They just want to push something through. And in the other terms, it's not a surprise. Erin O'Toole's been, I don't know, can I say worse leader than Andrew Scheer? I don't know.
I think it's pretty easy argument to make at this point. Hey guys, I'm against the carbon tax. No, like he came out. Do you guys not? Maybe you've seen the picture going around, but he signed. You remember the was an Ontario Proud or Oil Sands Canada Proud, something like that. Signed the no carbon tax pledge, and Aaron's there. Hi guys, I'm gonna sign this. Yeah, and he signs it, and then it's like,
Yeah,
and then Aaron today,
coming up
hey guys,
later.
I'm getting an endorsement by the Liberal Minister of Environment and Climate Change for my carbon tax. Ding! You remember that one I said I wouldn't implement? Now the Liberal Minister thinks it's great.
Do you think he'd actually
It's not
defund
the endorsement you
CBC?
want.
Do you think he'd
Sorry?
actually do you think he'd actually defund the CBC like you said if he got elected?
No, not at all.
No.
I think not at all. They'd butter him up. They'd write a few nice articles or something.
It's not even a full defunding. It's a defunding of everything but what, like a radio or something like that?
Sorry, what?
I remember. What his plan was if he was to become prime minister to defund the CBC.
He had a plan?
Or whatever you want to call it.
I honestly couldn't tell you what his plan was because he waited till like forever for it to come out, and I couldn't tell you what was in it.
I'm pretty sure it was everything but like CBC radio or something of that nature.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just don't trust the guy to actually do what he says he's gonna do. That's the issue. All right, so we got an article here. This is the one, I guess we'll get into the controversial stuff. We're at the halfway mark. That's pretty good. So I wrote an article today. Didn't want to put it in the title. But this is from a release, medical paper, published in the U.S. National Library of Medicine on October 28th, 2020. So it is old, but you can read it today. COVID-19 vaccines may sensitize vaccine recipients to more severe disease than if they were not vaccinated. This is straight out of the report. So again, it says COVID-19 vaccines designed to elicit neutralizing antibodies may sensitize vaccine recipients to more severe disease than if they were not vaccinated. The paper reviewed 20 different published papers intending to determine if sufficient literature exists to require clinicians to disclose the specific risk that COVID-19 vaccines could worsen disease upon exposure to challenge or circulating virus. So the paper noted that vaccines for SARS, MERS, and RSV have never been approved, and the data generated in the development and testing of these vaccines suggest a serious mechanistic concern. They added that the risk is sufficiently obscured in clinical trial protocols and consent forms for ongoing COVID-19 vaccine trials, which means that adequate patient comprehension of this risk is unlikely to occur, making adequately informed patient consent unlikely. So the takeaway here, they also talked about, there's another one in here. It was overly complex. It could have been simplified and in simpler language. More words than required were used. But this is straight out of the FDA. Pfizer application as well. So they kind of seem to acknowledge this, where they say they have something called vaccine enhanced disease, also called antibody dependent enhancement. So Pfizer's FDA application says that available data do not indicate a risk of vaccine enhanced disease and conversely suggest effectiveness against severe disease within the available follow-up period. They do know that the risk of vaccine-enhanced disease over time, potentially associated with waning immunity, remains unknown and needs to be evaluated further in ongoing clinical trials and observational studies. So basically, they have their first shots. They seem to be okay, but they're acknowledging that this needs to be observed in ongoing clinical trials and observational studies as well. So not sure what to take of that. But again, I don't know if it's being included in the question. So it's an interesting article, but again, these are the things I keep trying to bring attention to, these different medical papers that have kind of slipped through the cracks. And on this one, my understanding of things, again, is it's probably exceedingly rare, but you need to know why these things are happening. And when you don't, that's the real concern. So it says, available data do not indicate a risk of vaccine-enhanced disease. Instead, it has been effective in the follow-up period. But again, how long is that follow-up period? So they say the risk of vaccine-enhanced disease over time associated with waning immunity potentially remains unknown and needs to be evaluated further in ongoing clinical trials and in observational studies that could be conducted following authorization and or licensure. So basically, sorry, there's a article. Where to go? It has pictures. That's what I want. Here we go. So this is their concern, basically. Is their concern that it's being brought up with the vaccine about this ADE or vaccine adverse event. Or was it not vaccine adverse event, but ADE? We'll go with that. Potential outcomes of antibody response to coronavirus. So neutralizing antibody, it needs to bind to the ACE2 receptor. So this neutralizing antibody prevents the virus COVID from actually doing that. Okay, cool. So non-neutralizing antibodies, however, can actually be brought into the infection of a target cell. So non-neutralizing antibodies can produce pro-inflammatory cytokines, is my understanding. So basically, if you have the balance isn't right or something's off, and you have these antibodies that aren't neutralizing or the numbers aren't perfect, it can allow for entry into the cell through the actual spike protein, like the antibodies that are produced. That's my understanding of things. And they're saying it needs to be watched. So ADE, you can look into it. Again, I'm not an expert in that, and this is me trying to elaborate on that, which I shouldn't do really. But just go through, read that report. It was published in the National Library of Medicine, or NIH, and go from there. It's an interesting take. Yeah, like there's another one here. There. Go ahead.
Did you see that? I think it was a CTV article. I think one of you guys shared it too. I don't know if you talked about this on the Sunday show. I didn't catch all of it, but it was something in regards to informed consent with children at schools, and how a school nurse could explain to a student and give them it would give the nurse informed consent to give them a vaccine.
Yeah, well, they're trying to push for this, has been my understanding. You have like 12, 13-year-olds they want them to be able to make that decision themselves. So obviously, I don't think a 13-year-old's in a position that they know what's best.
Critically.
There's a reason we have a legal voting age and different things. Mm-hmm. So again, it's an emergency use authorization, and we're going to use that as the reasoning to give a 13-year-old the ability to make a decision. About an interim authorized approved vaccine. I'm sorry, everyone. Oh. Lost my laptop. There we go. All right. So, we'll wrap it up here. But again, I want to show this one more time. So this is the concern over non-neutralizing antibodies that are produced, and it's that it can allow for entry into the cell and or allow for production of inflammatory cytokines. So they bring that up, talking about it here, but they say COVID-19 vaccines designed to elicit neutralizing antibodies may sensitize vaccine recipients to more severe disease than if they were not vaccinated. So there's various trials that have been done. The most prevalent one would be the dengue fever one. There's different serotypes, and they tried to develop one for all four and realized they reacted differently, and there was issues there. But Elliot has already said parental consent would be needed. Well, that's good to know.
Changed or something's off.
Well, I don't know. It's tough to keep on
everything.
Yeah. It's tough to keep on everything.
I do have one thing on inflation rates. I've been working on a video tonight and an article, so I didn't get much to prepare. But finish what you were saying.
Hit it. Let's go. Inflation.
Okay.
So standard inflation is, they say 2%, and we're at 3.4. What's interesting is that a lot of it's been driven. Yeah, what's interesting is that a lot of the inflation has been driven by the price of oil and gas. Something the media conveniently forgets to blame Trudeau for, because it's carbon tax related. A lot of that.
I don't know if let's see. Justin. No. Oh, wow. Wow. His name's not even mentioned once in this article.
Nope.
You want to bring it up? What's going on?
I don't know. There
you go.
Let your producer do something and she doesn't do it. So,
Like,
here we go.
Search
Yeah,
for Justin on here. Nothing pops up. So yes, annual inflation rate in April rises to highest in nearly a decade. So saying prices increased in April at the fastest annual rate in nearly a decade, as gasoline prices posted a record year-over-year rise, and inflation continued to rebound from the plunge at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. The annual,
indication as to
The annual pace of inflation rose to 3.4% in April, Stats Canada reported Wednesday, up from a 2.2% year-over-year increase in the Consumer Price Index in March.
that's enough. Yep. So it's 3.4%. They don't even mention that. So gasoline, they admit that that's a big driver of the price, but they don't acknowledge that Trudeau's carbon tax hike might have had something to do with that. It's like a convenient leave it out because it's not going to suit the narrative. Like, oh, green energy is affordable and we can do these crazy green ideological pipe dreams we have, and it's going to be kumbaya and everybody's going to be okay. But the reality is it costs money, and you're seeing it in the numbers there. Inflation, largely driven by oil and gas, which was driven by what? A carbon tax increase.
It was also saying in the article that gas is up 62.5 cents per liter year over year from last April. That's actually, like, I know gas was really cheap last year at the beginning of this, but that's just insane. Like, how much?
Well, that's also a large part due to supply and demand issues. So
yeah,
they're all the issues that they've had with supply and being bottlenecked and not being able to get things out is a large part of that too. So I don't know why it's actually gone up, unless they've stopped producing and they're going on reserves, which is driving the cost because it hasn't been worth maybe producing enough right now. I don't know. I'd have to look more into why it's gone up 60 cents. That seems kind of steep. I wonder how. You got to keep in mind that could be reflective of the carbon tax too that they're paying now. So tough to say. All right. I feel like it's a pretty good place to end here, but I want to show. I got one more thing. Right, no, that's not the one I wanted. Where's the Facebook? I have pictures from Toronto, and we'll go through this. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll close out the show.
I have one other thing to say besides that before we close.
Oh, do you now? Okay. Yes. All right, so I think we could probably update this article to say 8,000 plus. I've looked over it a bunch of times. But basically, Toronto, it was packed. People were mad that we didn't put more people, but we looked at the footage, we looked at pictures, we looked at videos. It's not as dense as it looks. This is a bottleneck street. You can see a little bit better. But yeah, so here we are with some of the police presence that was out. Just a little bit of it. Some of the other police presence. And this is one of the shirts there. It's thinking illegal yet. These guys were having a blast. And going around like that and shouting at people to wear a mask that were wearing masks, but to do it better, essentially. So, Mr. Speedo is back. But yeah, you can check out our video. We have live stream footage. Give you an idea there. Like, it's pretty well one of the biggest turnouts. I know a lot of people are thinking there's a lot more people than that. It's tough to say, and I always go with the lowest conservative estimate, so people can't say, like we went with a super high number or something like that. But it's always really hard to tell when you're in a crowd how many people are there, and I think there's a tendency to overestimate anytime you see like a large group of people. Is like the biggest thing I've noticed. Like anytime there's a large group of people seem to always overestimate how many people are there.
It certainly felt a lot like, I would say, close to, remember Montreal last year?
No,
Like,
I
not
wouldn't
close.
put it with
I
Montreal.
wouldn't say it wasn't as high. I wouldn't say it was as high as Montreal.
See, I don't
feel
know.
like
Maybe it was a
getting
similar
up there.
crowd.
Because it was a lot of people, and it was just. But I remember Montreal, at that bottleneck road that goes down.
That's the difference, I think.
Crazy, and the crowd was constant too.
So that's what I think the difference is. There might have been similar crowds in Montreal when we did the 10,000 plus there, and maybe, but it's just there's bottleneck streets. You can see how tight it was, and the density is there. And then where we were, it was a 4-lane road with 2 bike lanes. And so it's a lot harder to get a guesstimate of how many people were there, but it doesn't matter. The crowds are growing. We talked about it, but Canadian Federation for Independent Business reporting that society is close, or we are close to societal collapse. Many business owners that were quiet in the first and second lockdowns are fed up and ready to open. Many Ontarians, many Canadians in general, not following lockdown orders, as you can see on any given day when the weather's nice. People at parks, people at walking streets with lots and lots of cars. So it seems to be falling down, but I think that's a good time. Let's comb through the comments here and close it up. You say you had one more thing?
Yeah. So next Wednesday, I know we only do live streams on Wednesdays every other week. But next Wednesday, we will also be live, and the following one for our regular me and Greg thing. Next Wednesday, we have nurse practitioner Crystal Pitter. She'll be joining us for an interview regarding how she lost her job, which many can guess, but they did more of the details around that and some general COVID discussion with Greg. I'll be starting off, Greg and me, I might stick around, but the beginning we'll talk about the smear articles that she experienced from the CBC and other publications back last summer.
Yeah.
So that's
no surprise there, right?
We put out her speech, I think it was last week, and she didn't really talk about much of the details around that, and I'd like to get more of her firsthand basis. I contacted her months and months and months ago, but she could not speak on the matter at the time. So
time has funny ways of changing things. So Wednesday next week, that was at what time? 7 p.m., 8 p.m.?
It'll be 8:30 p.m.
Oh, okay. So Wednesday next week, 8:30 p.m., Crystal Pitter. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Nurse Crystal Pitter. Friday, we're going to be having a panel discussion about the pandemic with 2 gentlemen, 2 friends of mine, Santiago and Alan. And then we're looking at, as well as getting Chris Semchuk of Veterans Voice Veritas on next week. So it looks like we could have 3 live shows plus the Sunday show. So stay tuned for next week. It's going to be busy, but lots of entertainment coming your way. Make sure, if you're new to the channel, to subscribe. But if you're new, if you haven't already done so, rather, on divergemedia.ca, go and make sure you're signed up for our email subscription so that you get notified when new articles come out. And one of the things I'm working on doing, I realize no Canadian broadcasters are doing this. There's really no YouTubers doing this. I'm going to each week be putting out another day in the House of Commons clip where I take hours upon hours upon hours upon hours of footage that you don't want to watch, and I clip 2 or 3, maybe 5 minutes of entertainment information out of that so that you can watch it. We're going to start doing that on a weekly basis as well. And another thing I want to throw out there, as we are looking for guest columnists. So if you have an article on a topic that you're extremely interested and knowledgeable about, send it in through email to our Diverge Media email at divergemedia@outlook.com. And if your article is really well done, it could be published in divergemedia.ca as a guest columnist. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You can help support us through merch and the one in behind. $35 each, our donations, and we look forward to continuing to bring you the stories that matter. Thank you for diverging with us from the mainstream media and joining Diverge Media. I'm Greg Silly, signing off. We'll see you next time.